Hello, everyone, and welcome to the session. It is my pleasure to introduce Ryan Wilday, analyst with ElliottTrader.net's cryptocurrency trading service, which he launched in August of 2017. Now, to our live viewers, if you have questions for Ryan throughout this session, please go ahead and share them in the live chat box. It's to the right-hand side of the video player there. And with that said, Ryan, I will hand the mic over to you. I'll be here if you need me, but the floor is all yours.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are calling in from. All right, so today's presentation is Surviving Bitcoin's Bear Market. I was thinking just 2 minutes ago, I should have called it Surviving and Thriving in Bitcoin's Bear Market. So what I'm trying to do is I'll give you guys goals as we go on. But first, if you would like a copy of the presentation, you can use the right QR code, or if you're old school, email info@elliottwavetrader.net and Thomas will help you out. And then if you're interested in what you hear today, you can click the left QR and get a free trial for 2 weeks, no credit cards. I'm going to give a few more seconds here and then I'll move on. But when we get to Q&A, I'll come back here if you're taking a bit to get your phone out. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, and I'll come back. Let's see. All right, so I've been introduced thoroughly. I don't want to go through my history. I have almost as long as the service existed, I have been talking with the Money Show. And I think most of these calls I've made on some semblance of conference or talk at the Money Show. And you notice the last one started looking for 25K Bitcoin to finish the top of this primary third wave, or other words, start a major bear market. And right now, as of today, it looks like that pretty much hit at 126,500. But we'll see. We're going to talk about that a little bit further, and we'll see if that holds. This disclaimer, I mean, I will just summarize this as, just because I'm so into trading crypto does not mean it's a recommendation for you. Especially it's a very volatile asset. Do your research as well. This is really no trading advice, no financial advice. I'm sharing analysis and tactics. Doesn't mean that everything I share as an action item is right for you as well. If you're new to crypto, I would say just take it slow and start small. That's in general, at the very least. But by no means should everyone listening to this get involved. It is up to you and up to your work. All of my work, well, I shouldn't say all of my work, but most of my work is tied to Elliott wave theory, 100 year plus old theory that has still worked really well in markets. It's not all of what I do in my technical analysis. I would just say I'm not a fundamental analyst. I'm purely a technical analyst, except, well, I shouldn't say 100%, but with respect to crypto, that's my mojo and my path, my approach. But Elliott Wave definitely plays into this presentation. This is what I want to do. I want to communicate that I believe a bear market in crypto, including Bitcoin, is likely arrived. I have just one more level that needs to fall to what I would call confirmation. I hate that it's a dirty word in trading, confirmation, because sometimes you get a confirmation and then your confirmation is undone. But we have to somewhat talk like that to speak to high probability. And so I'll talk about that level. I want you to understand that a crypto bear market is a two-edged sword. It's an opportunity to buy cheap Bitcoin gradually, eventually. At the same time, you can lose your shirt doing it. So I intend to give you some of the tools, or at least taste of the tools, to help you understand how to do that. I'm going to give you some key levels to watch and potentially accumulate in the future. Of course, given these goals, if you bought at the top, you do have a bit of a challenge, and I can't tell you what to do with that position. I certainly have, in my 8 years experience, buying at the wrong time and at the same time shepherded people through in the service, how to deal with having bought at the wrong time. But we want to talk about buying at the right time, because that's what we're left with when a bear market starts. And so I'll give a couple of levels, practical ways of doing that. Let's see. And just so you understand disclosure, I don't just because we're in a bear market doesn't mean I'm fully short or fully flat. I actually am long and short Bitcoin. I have what I call never sell Bitcoin in cold wallets, high security wallets that I've accumulated over time. Most of it with profit, because I like to have that sitting comfortably. And basically it can go to zero and I really lost no money. That's basically how I roll with like the long term. But on a swing trade basis right now, I'm long because I bought into November low. A lot of that's underwater actually, and I'm managing out of it. skillfully, and at the same time, I'm literally today right now short some futures. So I'm all over the place in terms of trading because I trade Bitcoin, sort of for a career, and I trade on multi-time frames. So I want you to have that disclosure just so you know that, hey, I'm not making any advice here to say, okay, you got to go short. That would be disingenuous, so to say. But you have to understand that I trade in many different ways, both spot and derivative. Um, Keep pressing the down key. Just so I'm going through some of my history. You can see how this rolled out. This was posted in 2023, and I was looking for a major bottom. I mean, if you were there and there was a lot of bad news here, and I want to say that and note that because that's going to be important later in the presentation. But I was looking for long in that area between 24K and 15K, and that certainly played out well. And you can see where my circle three is, which is sitting up just above 125K. And so, this call expectation basically played out verbatim almost, which I always get a little bit surprised because I don't have a crystal ball. I simply have a technique for looking at price reactions and waves and whatnot. And it's just it still surprises me having been trained in it and used it how sometimes it ends up being prescient. But really, honestly, I have no crystal ball, and you don't need a crystal ball to trade profitably over time. It helps when it works out. This was again another presentation in July 23. I can say that the micro path to 125 didn't play out at all, but the ultimate path did. We arrived at an important top. Again, everything and I'm talking about all of this breakdown looks actually nothing like that. And that's often when you get into micro wave count, as we call them, we have constant adjustment because the information the market provides is a much more rapid pace. The larger time frames tend to work out in terms of this analysis technique almost verbatim because again, the information path or rate of information, new information in the market is very slow when you're looking at a weekly, monthly chart to map out your targets. And then finally, actually, this is not the last time I talked at the Money Coach because the last time I wasn't ready for it and I just pulled out a chart. But this was from my slide presentation two presentations ago. And you can see again, it didn't look exactly like this, but again, the path. And what I called out in that, the first bear market was a break of 108. This is actually where I took off most of my swing longs and went swing short. I did in the service catch a pretty good short out of that region as we arrived down into November low, which time frames are way off too because we're way out here somewhere. Well, actually, I think we're off the chart. But anyway, this level I called out 74,500 is that cyclical bear pivot where I said, okay, the bear market is absolutely on, and we haven't broken it yet. But like I have said in previous presentations, also if you've caught my monthly public webinar, which you can follow me on Twitter, if you want to participate in that, it's the third Saturday of every month, and I also post a video. It does no good for me to say, okay, the bear market confirms down here when that is a 30% loss. So when I had enough risk off of a risk in that it was the case, and again, 108K was that level, I'm getting out of Dodge, so to speak. And let's wait until we get into the support level to see if the market sets up for another high. If it does set up for another high, I'm looking at 150. That is actually well within the yellow box that is sort of the region of target. My leaning is we will not see that. We will not see that for years. But again, as always, market presents new information, get a setup that aims us there. Hey, I'm game. Let's get to 150. But we'll see. So we're in a key spot here. I'm going to speak mostly as though the bear market is on and that this level will break. Okay. I'm going to speak that way, but I want you to understand that if I see a setup appropriate for trading for 150, I will take it. Okay. I haven't really, I have to say, I haven't really planned saying what that looks like, but I'll try to describe it. This is where we're at in the sort of swing chart today. Again, the pivot's right here. This action here, this structure here right now gives me projecting 72K. Okay, I will actually give it grace if we get a setup for 150, and here's that level up here. If it happens at 72K, simply because whenever I have a pivot, I look for sustained break of it, which means like bearish consolidation underneath and falling away from it. is the best way of describing that. It's not a time-based thing, but it's an action-based thing. But if we, pierce 74,500, maybe even hit 72K, and then immediately start to reverse, a bid comes in, and then again leads to a long setup, then I will say, okay, that was just a very brief breach of a key pivot, and let's trade for long. So it depends on how that action is down there. If we start to see bearish consolidation down there, it's bad news, at least for those that bought at the top. That is an area that I'm looking for next. And then if we zoom in even further, this was taken snapshotted yesterday. And by and large, we actually have hit my A target, and it looks like we're starting to come down into 8, which has a support level of 87K. And if that holds, and by no, so B waves are tricky because they can be anywhere from topping here to here. They don't have to subdivide in this way. B is, I have a bad word for the B word that I won't repeat. With my subscribers, they know where I'm coming from. But because it's kind of rude and derogatory, but basically they're tricky, and so they can subdivide or they can be very simple, like this ABC, versus subdividing into a larger degree ABC. Whether this A top ends up being all B top, I do not know, but the pivot for that is 87K, and below 87K sustained. We're on that path for at least nominally 72K. Okay, so this is a key point. We're reaching that. We're reaching for that bear market pivot. Nothing about action here says to me set up for long right now. It's just basically bearish consolidation down here, sideways action or corrective, as we call it in Elliott wave speak. And it looks pretty well destined. Something may change, but right now pretty much destined for seeing the 70s right now. Just again to frame, if you've been at the last presentation, you've seen this chart, and I apologize. I don't know why it is looking so pale. I looked for an option in Google Docs for getting this more contrasty, but maybe if I turned it to the black version of TradingView, look better. My Motive Wave software no longer has the data set for the long out, and I've been able to fix it. So I apologize for all that. So just bear with me in terms of describing this, and hopefully you can see it well enough. How I look at this bear market, the primary base case is this large fourth wave in black. And it's not to say that it gets to 10K, but I will not be at all surprised by that. But the place where we find ourselves now is mainly this A wave, which can drop as low as 25K, with a B wave in the middle that could scrape the new all-time highs, maybe even break it briefly, or stay below it. Doesn't matter. And then, this pivot I'm talking about, 75K, is this A wave. So basically, once we hit 75K, I do expect a very strong rally. And in fact, if you are long at the top, which again, everyone finds themselves at that situation because the good news is always the best at the top. So a lot of people tend to drive in. The price action tends to be, very green. So a lot of people buy the tops. It's just a very common experience. And before long, in my early days, I certainly did it enough times to experience pain. But if you're long at the top, you might look at this B wave as a way to exit or cut back or de-risk in some way. Buy some put options, on iBid or something like that. There's a lot of ways of managing a bad trade position, but we watch for that as we get. And I can't, again, B is, I have a terrible word for them. They have no regular behavior. I don't know how high it will go until I have a lot of internal structure built up in it, unfortunately. So I can't say this is where you get out of the B wave. They are not that regular, unfortunately. But once that B wave tops, I expect to drop into between 75K and 25K. And that can be an alternate path to this actually goes to 1 million. Okay, it's not my primary case. I will look for appropriate price action to believe it wholeheartedly and make it primary as my view, but it's something I'm watching for regardless. The other thing I put on my map, and again, so I discount that for now, but somewhere down the line in a money show presentation, we're like, folks, we're going to 1 million. You never know. But right now I can't say that. The other thing I put on my map is this line here, 2 lines, and this is the time frame of what's known as the 4-year cycle bottom. I have said repeatedly publicly, I think one day the 4-year cycle bottom or 4-year cycle will break, and what this is basically Bitcoin's rises and falling have followed a rhythm along the Bitcoin halvings, which is where the Bitcoin miners get half the Bitcoin out of each. Now we're down to like 1% inflation in Bitcoin from those rewards. So, just from a fundamental basis, there's diminishing returns in that from a fundamentals standpoint. Okay. It should have less pull theoretically, mathematically on Bitcoin's rises and falling, but so far it sort of quote unquote works. Now I like to say, okay, it's worked three times. It's a very low instance. Any quantitative trader would never use three times as a signal, but I cannot deny this top showed up right at where you expect within a window of I think it was a month or so of where that 4-year cycle should have topped. And right now it looks like we did. So I went off price. I didn't go off on time, but it lined up again. So, the 4-year cycle. So I'm going to be very curious about watching this cycle low, which is October 26th. It seems to appear to me that if it really shows a bottom, it's likely somewhere between 25 and 55K. That the target for that will depend on where the B wave tops. Then I'll be more precise about it. That's a big range right now, right? But it looks like that's maybe where it shows. And again, does it become the ultimate bottom of this bear market, or does it become the temp bottom in this larger black count? Another thing I would say is, again, we have another B wave up here, larger degree B wave than this wave, the main B wave of this. Now, that possibly can break to new all-time highs. B waves are famous. In fact, as an Elliottician, we call the 2009 top in S&P 500 a B wave in a 9-year or 11-year? Sorry, 2007 top as a B wave in a 9-year bear market from 2000 2009. Okay, I think I'm getting my dates right. So you can look at that chart, and that's an example of a B wave that goes to all-time highs. Bitcoin had one here in 2022, so it also does that at times. Okay, so that could be new all-time highs. And lastly, fourth wave sometimes are triangles, which this can just simply have its biggest move down in this A wave and then just go sideways for 5 years or something in a triangle. That is a very common form in fourth waves. I haven't seen one of this size in Bitcoin, and in fact, they're rarer on lower time frames. But that's something else that can happen. That's the trick with corrective wave patterns. They can have multiple ways of sort of permeating outward and all sorts of moves, but they largely basically get you nowhere unless you're buying the bottom of the range. So it helps to kind of know where the bottom of the range should be, which is, at a base case 25K and ultimately possibly 10K. Okay. And then again, on the top, we could break new all-time highs briefly. Okay. So this has been shared before. You've seen this take in Money Show in the past. If it's new to you, maybe you have some questions, but pretty important framing of what I see happening in the future, and barring surprises from the market. Okay. All right. And then, so another thing I want to leave you now, a lot of risk in this, right? If you're buying here at 125K, we're going to 10K, you're down 90%, right? Is that unusual? No. Look at the past here in 2018, just in 1 year. This was my beginning stage in Bitcoin, being, I would say, at a career level. I was in the 2016 to 2017 run up, and 2018 dropped 73%. There you can go to the before into the, I was introduced to Bitcoin in 2012. Well, right after 2012, we had like it was a 80% drop or something like that. And I started buying like well after that. I was mining then, but I had to give up my mining rig and sell my Bitcoin because I didn't know what I was doing with it, right? So but I became sort of pro, quote unquote, after that. And this was the time where Bitcoin whacked me, and I had to get used to it. I forget how much this decline was, but it was, I think this was something like actually 60% right here. And then certainly the most recent one in 2022 is down 64%. So anytime I'm talking, now we've seen 80% declines in the past. Anytime I'm talking about a 60 to 90% decline, you should view that as not surprising and normal. Lots of talk about institutions slowing Bitcoin down. So far, that hasn't happened. We've seen just as much volatility as we've seen in the past. Bitcoin has been slowing down longer than institutions been in it because this curve of growth is slowing if you looked at it. I don't have the full chart up, but it's this very long slowing curve. So it is happening, but it has nothing to do with institutions. It just has to do with the market cap getting bigger, the market getting bigger, getting more players involved. And yeah, sure, institutions are one player in all of that cycle and life cycle of Bitcoin. Okay. But nothing has happened. Nothing has done, these bear markets, we haven't seen any real evidence that they are going to be more shallow over time. Okay. So all of my expectations here should be viewed as normal Bitcoin behavior. Okay. Probably the only thing different here is that Bitcoin has never had more than one red year in a row. Okay. And you might say that this is sort of historic. Well, again, how many years does Bitcoin exist? We've had something like 3 or 4 red years. Okay. At some point in time, we'll have 2 red years in a row. I mean, just these kinds of statistical norms break at some point. At the same time, it's possible that every down move I have in Bitcoin is contained within 1 year, and then say, like, for example, the B wave happens in 1 year after red year, right? Like, so it may even not happen in a way that breaks that statistic. We don't know. Okay, so my again, I've had a lot of people tell me I'm crazy. Okay, that's normal in this job. I'm not saying anything unnormal. Okay, so you shouldn't take it that way. Now, accumulation zones. Okay, then this is sort of the gold, or what you can do. Okay, and again, it's hard if you have bought at the top. All I can offer is that B wave, but I really can't give you certain levels. But if you're looking for a chance now to accumulate Bitcoin, these are some areas to look at. Again, I'm not giving you advice by here, because in any of these levels, if you have properly digested my charts, the rally could be corrective and come right back down, in fact, go to new lows. But the levels I'm looking at are 172, 75K coming up, right? Again, I expect it to break gradually, but we should get a corrective rally out of it. And again, I'm going to emphasize should. Nothing I have is based on a crystal ball. Next would be 25 to 50K. And then lastly, 10K, I would look as a bargain. What I didn't say very well in this slide is, despite these normal bear markets, okay, these, if I think of my personal wealth, it was participating in these times that increased my wealth immensely. Okay, it's painful, especially when you made a career out of it. Okay, but after this 2018 73% drop, it was a 20x move from here to there, 3K to $65,000. After 64 down, this was a more tame 5x move, roughly. Or no, I think it was more than that. Ultimately, 15K to 125K. No, it's more than that. 6x or so. I can't do math in my head very well, but you get my point, right? So these bear markets are where the wealth is built, not when the big green candles show up in a bull market, right? This is the opportunity. I talked about the two-edged sword. The problem is you got to do it so carefully. You don't want to get over leveraged, right? You want to do it slowly. You kind of want to know where to start to accumulate, and then you don't want to blow your entire wad on every single point of low price, right? Of levels that are key. Okay, so that's just some general, sort of two-edged sword advice. Be careful. And then lastly, there's this interesting thing. I don't like RSI, and I generally do not trade with oscillating indicators. I trade pure price action structure. No, you will find not on a regular basis or for useful to trading is indicators. I really don't like them, but there is a habit where when Bitcoin's daily candle closes, and I'm talking about the UTC time, which is like Greenwich time 0. I think that's right for UTC time. But roughly when that candle closes below a 30 RSI on the 1-day chart, it's the time to start accumulating. And that's where, like, I bought it in November low. I was looking at that level, but even more than that, it was kind of in between levels because we weren't quite in the 70s, but the RSI was going to 30, and we got a tradable rally off of it. Generally, I find that you get a tradable rally and then get a trailing stop underneath it, depending on method you use, and profit from some of that. So that's something you can look at if you're skilled in oscillators and use of oscillators. And you can look at a history of Bitcoin chart on a 1-day chart and see, oh, that's played out pretty well. The other things that Bitcoin in bear market tends to bounce between the 200 moving average and the 200 week moving average and the 50-week moving average. And the 50-week moving average is a bear signal for a lot of people, which has broken and sustained under, I think it's up at 100K. So we're well below some the other sort of bear market pivots that some other analysts use, which is not averages. Again, I don't like indicators like that, but I have to at least recognize that they've been useful for Bitcoin to a degree. Just rules of bear market accumulation, no leverage, don't get over your skis. Use rallies to take some profit. So when you accumulate into key levels, I'm not going to be on all the time to guide you through where I'm buying and selling unless you join the service. But, and again, don't take it as a marketing thing. It's not right for everyone. But when I'm buying into 72K, I'm going to be looking for also an out, not to get out of all that I bought, but to basically lower my cost, to get my net cost down. The bear market to me is not just accumulating cheap Bitcoin, but also dropping my cost basis, right? So because in bull markets, my cost basis climbs. I'm still participating. And so I'm using the bear market to get my net cost down. And so that means buying and selling, I'm running spreadsheets to say, okay, where's my net cost? And sometimes I'm not buying, maybe even find a good level, but I'm not going to buy it if it's not dropping my cost. So that's how I kind of work my long-term holds over time, is get that cost down. So take that but you have to do that in small pieces. And then again, never blow the whole bankroll in that one shot. Oh, we're at 72K, Ryan. So 72K is great. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy a bunch, and I'm going to buy all the money I intended to buy with. Okay. Please don't. I can give you that advice because that's not telling you what to do, it's telling you what not to do. So just don't blow your whole bankroll. And I think a lot of you folks that are long-term investors know better anyway. But again, in my seat, I have to often shepherd people through buying at the wrong point, and not only that, but buying with everything. Which be really careful with your cash. Super key. All right. Um, you know, this was a slide from my last presentation. This is where that presentation was given where people were thought I'm looking for a top, and everyone thought I was nuts. And I gave them sentiment warnings. There were some wild projections by end of the year X, right? By the end of the year we'll be at 250. By the end of the year we'll be at a million X, X, Y, and Z. Okay, when you start seeing that, you're near the top. This cycle is just beginning. I remember hearing that when we were over 100Ks. I remember hearing that as Trump was getting inaugurated, and I'm not trying to get political, but he was the pro-Bitcoin president that was going to continue to shoot Bitcoin through the moon. And now people are actually saying the opposite. He's such a scammer because Bitcoin prices are going down. I say he has nothing to do with it either way. And I'm not trying to be political. I'm just saying that if we think our presidents control prices, we are insane. And then the last one was company treasuries and sovereign wealth funds are going to keep buying Bitcoin and send it to me. Well, they haven't stopped. Well, at least the company treasuries, like MSTR, still buying Bitcoin. But I always tell people like they don't buy with a market order that moves prices. They buy limit orders using algos. They don't move. They don't move anyway. They don't move the price of Bitcoin anyway when they buy. They're smarter than that. When you run big money, you gotta to work in the shadows and not move the market. You have to, otherwise you kind of screw yourself. So I always laugh when people say that. Anyway, if they know anyone that runs big money and how they operate, they can't operate that way. It's not possible. You can't move billions that way. All right, and now, okay, think about the negative side of that. Okay, as we get into some of these lows, we should hear some really negative sentiment. Okay, negative politics. Okay, maybe the voice that Trump is killing the Bitcoin price. Maybe that's what we're starting to hear as we get into the next low. Major crypto fraud. Again, the bottom in 2023 happened when the FTX debacle occurred. We had the scammer SBF who was losing people's Bitcoin, right, and ruining crypto. And I remember hearing the thing, crypto is dead forever. I remember hearing that. Okay, that was near the bottom, right? You hear the worst news at the bottoms, right? And then maybe we get this: quantum computing is close to cracking Bitcoin. I mean, I'm hearing that talk periodically now. Maybe it'll get really loud, and maybe I'm missing something. I don't know what that news will be, but you always hear the worst news at the bottom. That's my next slide. You always hear the worst news at the bottom, and you always hear the best news at the top. And I don't know who just said that. It's kind of along the lines of Buffett, right? He said, buy when everyone is greedy, or sorry, be greedy when everyone is fearful, and be fearful when everyone is greedy. I think that's right, something like that. But the essence is accurate. All right. That is all I've got. Real quick, if you want to follow me on Twitter, especially if you're interested in a monthly webinar that I put on, you can follow me. I'll do an announcement. And then if you miss it, again, third Saturday is when I do it publicly, unless I'm traveling. I didn't do it I didn't do it. Oh, sorry. I don't think I'm doing it in February. We'll see because I have a serious travel schedule in February. But stay tuned. I should, rain or shine, should do it in March. And then if you miss it, just look at my tweets and you'll see a video link posted at some point. So that's A.R. Wilday. And I'll go back up to the QR codes so that we can kick back and get some questions answered. And then you can get the presentation if you haven't been able to get it yet.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. I know that you were tight on time yourself today, so I'll keep this quick. I had actually Jane in the chat asked if you could restate the top and bottom of the blue box on the last chart that you had
Yeah.
showed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 55K to 25K, thereabouts. I
Thank
mean,
you.
it's a big range, so it can vary on any exchange, et cetera, but somewhere in that range.
And then I just had one other question here from Gerard. He was asking about adding silver to replace Bitcoin. He wants to know if it's too late to add more physical silver today.
I'm not the metals trader. I mean, in fact, I day trade silver futures. I have a bunch of silver coins that I bought somewhere back in '08. But Avi, as our founder, is the metals guy. I'm not even aware of the long-term silver charts, to be honest. I day trade it, so I'm like, I know the opening hour bar, and then I go. Not my thing, sorry.
No worries. Sounds like they need to go to elliottwavetrader.net to find out some more.
Yeah, yeah. Check out Avi's work.
All right. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you on. To those watching live, as Ryan said, go ahead and scan those QR codes if you want some more information, if you want to get a free trial of his service. Again, Ryan, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks again.
You bet. Thanks,
All
guys.
righty. And to those of you watching us live, we do still have a little more in store for you in this Money Show Virtual Expo. But I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.